So today in High Res Studios, we have Jess and JR Hecker. They own Genesis.
Yep.
And JR, you have a separate company.
Armor Financial.
But we're going to talk about growth. We're going to talk about pains of business. What else are we going to talk about? There's a couple different things that we had talked about Sunday that we were going to like kind of get into it.
Hindsight 2020.
Yeah. If we
Vision
knew,
of hindsight.
If we knew what we knew then.
Right.
So Jess, if you want to go ahead and introduce your company.
Yeah. So I own Genesis Holistic Health. It's a holistic wellness company. We make holistic wellness products, and I also see clients to just help them get to the root cause of their issues in a healthy, natural way.
How did that come about?
So I have been in the holistic health space for close to 20 years. It started with my own journey where I actually couldn't get pregnant when I was younger. And I had a grandma who was into all the holistic wellness, and I had gone through all the medications and doing all the things, and it actually made me legitimately crazy. Like, I sat on the kitchen floor one night and cried hysterically because I didn't want to decide where we were going to order pizza from. So I told my husband.
I do sometimes too.
So my husband at the time, I was just like, if this is what it takes, I can't do it. And my grandma, we lived close to Amish country in Northeast Ohio. And so she's like, you should come out here and they can help you. And I thought she was kind of wackoed. I was like, okay, grandma, like whatever. And so I went out there and they gave me this cream, and I used that for about a month or so. And in about 2 months I was pregnant.
Really?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. And I kind of dabbled in it here and there over the next few years. And then when my son was about 7 years old, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and I didn't want to medicate him. We did for a short amount of time and realized real quickly that wasn't the best option for us. So I dove headfirst into researching everything I possibly could to how to support him without medication. And that's led me down a whole path of becoming a holistic wellness practitioner and now owning my own business.
Nice. My parents just beat me. Just paddle me like once a day for like.
I've paddled the ADHD right out of you.
Oh yeah, they're like, just come over here and let me hit you for a minute. And then,
I think that's how we grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then your business, how did you come about with your business?
Yeah, so I was actually in a rock and roll band out of college. I got a degree in history, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Joined a band, traveled all over the country for about 5 years doing that, and then broke my wrist rollerblading and took some time off and was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do this anymore. My father at the time had run an agency for mostly group benefit stuff. He had a little small side of it that did financial planning and money management. I found that way more interesting. So I said, hey, I think I might want to get into this, and took some specialized training to learn about what that all looks like and how to do that. I was trained in true financial planning, which very few people in this industry get trained in. And I was pretty successful at that for a while. Got very successful with it. And then God has a way of, altering paths, especially when he has other plans that he knows are better for you. So yeah, God shook that up quite a bit. And, in the process of going through that, revealed to me a higher calling related to what I do in financial planning, and money management, and really revealed to me this, just this idea around stewardship related to biblical responsibility in investing. Where do you put your money at work? Which companies are you purchasing partial ownership in? And what do then those companies do with the resources that you are investing with them? And whether they're in alignment with biblical principles. And what I found is even mutual fund companies that market and sell biblically responsible funds actually hold a lot of stocks and a lot of resources in companies that support, for instance, just LGBTQ, things like that, things that are out of alignment with what Christian believers' values would be in alignment with. So that's kind of been my 2.0 journey in my career field has been being called into that aspect of money management.
Gotcha. And I'll give you you guys know, but I don't know if I've ever talked about it on this, like what we do. So we started off building houses and doing like kitchens and baths and stuff like that. And I had a buddy that had done roofing, and he's like, "Hey man, you should come down here and I'll show you how to do roofing." And then I got, for some reason, into the roofing game. And, it's been good. We've been in the roofing game for 5 years. I walked away. I was a firefighter paramedic for 17 years. And I was like, I want to go own my own business so I can work like 90 hours a week. And,
right. Take all the risk.
Yeah. Like that's crazy. It'll be great. It'll be a ton of fun, but it has been fun. It's been great. It's been rewarding. Probably this gray patch in my beard has gotten bigger, but it's been good. And that's what we're going to talk about today is some of that. Our podcast is not just, so like the thing about it is a lot of times before you got successful with your business, it was that thought of, man, am I just this at this level? Am I ever going to get better? Am I ever going to, we get trapped in that whole thing. And so that's what we like to talk about here is how did we break that mindset of I'm just I'm just, or I'm just enough, not that God wants us to be more.
Right.
So speaking on growth, how and I know the story, so we're gonna kind of get into it. You guys had an explosive growth. Yep. So give us a story about that real quick.
So I've made holistic health products my whole life, and I've put them up on a website or, shared them on some social media platforms. So with this particular product, I did the same thing. I had made a product, and it was a product that was exploding everywhere, a wild yam cream, and I put it up, I made it, I put it up online. I was like, okay, Lord, do what you do. And I went to bed. And my expectation really was, I'd sell a few and that would be cool and it would be extra money for our family. And it was that for, a couple days. But very quickly we had a lot of social media influencers reach out to us, which I thought was fake at the time.
Gimmicky.
Yeah. I had this lady reach out and she was like, can I promote your product? I was like, sure, sis. Go ahead. I just, okay. Yeah. And,
maybe I'll sell 3.
Yeah. So she started promoting our product and she messaged me, I don't know, a week later maybe, and was like, so we sold a lot today. And so I looked on my website because that's where I thought most of the traffic was going. And we had sold 6 products. I'm like, oh, that's cool. We're doing great. She's like, no, I've sold 60 this morning. And I was like, I think we had 8 made, 8 actual units. And I was like, oh,
ready for the explosion.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so we quickly learned how to manufacture things a little more quickly, but it kept growing and growing and growing. And then, that was in September. By the beginning of December, we had a social media platform reach out to us that wanted to sign a $2.2 million contract with us that they would sell a certain number of units in the next 60 days. And if they didn't, they would pay us either way.
That's always good.
Yeah. So
crazy.
Yeah.
And it's been a roller coaster ever since.
You can call them and ask them if they want to buy $2.2 million of roots from me. Whether they sell them or not, I got them.
So yeah, it's been a roller coaster. I've learned by fire hose for about the last 10 months. And it's been an amazing ride. The Lord has blessed us in ways that I cannot even, I just can't even still understand. And I'm so, so grateful. But he's also taken us through some times where it's okay, well, let's see, if you have everything you need to have in place, and let's, he'll take us through these slower times. And usually what we have found in those slower it's been exciting.
Yeah. So with you having your own business and you guys being married, like you guys are the power couple now. Financial, you get a big contract. You can put that money where it needs to go.
Right.
But how did this take over your life too?
Yeah, I mean, it started by, like she said, she's making 8 to 10 or 12 or whatever. And I wish we had documented this a little bit, but this is a hindsight being 2020.
I have it.
Yeah.
I have it.
Okay.
I have it documented.
Yeah. I wish we,
Like a YouTube channel kind of thing?
well, no, I wish there had been more photo or video content
no, I
related
don't
to it.
have that.
Like the early images of the very first way that I came along to help her was moving the glass jars across the kitchen island in our kitchen while she piped it out with a gallon piping bag, you know, because that's how we did it in the beginning. She made it on the stove and then she would do this and I would move them out of the way and then help put the jar lids on. Like that's how it started.
Yeah. So in that, like, that's what I think, like a lot of people like don't document, like, you know, because people think they're like, oh man, it's just a small business.
It's just this thing in our kitchen.
Yeah. It's just this thing in our kitchen. And then now you guys have a factory.
Multiple, two.
Yeah, like 2 factories, you know? So like that's what, like, I always tell everybody, I'm like, man, like take pictures of the ride, take videos of the ride, you know? And I mean, I'm not plugging for high res, but you know, I do have a media business. But yeah, that's really important is that, like, you don't like, I have my first contract that I ever signed on paper.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was for a little, like, 18 square roof or something. It was, I don't even think it was 18 squares. I think it was like 10 squares. It was a little bitty house in Fairborn. And it was my aunt's house. It was the first roof that Patriot did. And I still have that contract in my office. And I have a picture. And somebody was like, what's that picture of? I'm like, dude, that's my first roof ever. You know, like, that's what I think. I think we kind of sell ourselves short. It's like, oh man, it's just a small business. And then you sit in church one day and you get 55 notices.
Right. Yeah. Like that's an interesting story too. So this was before kind of everything blew up, but I had posted my product online and we were serving in church that morning and my watch actually was order. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, what's going on? And so then we go into the church service and the church service is about, you know, the widow who was, you know, asked to just keep getting the jars and the oil keeps, you know, coming. And we actually literally had to leave that church service and go buy jars. Like that was the reality of our situation. And, you know, so we're calling everybody that we know. Like my sister at the time lives with us, praise God. And so she's helping and our kids are helping. And
then every time we're like, well, I don't know, what should we do? I'm like, buy more jars.
Yeah.
Get more jars. The blessing keeps flowing as long as you have more jars, right? The blessing ran out when you ran out of vessels to fill, you know? So it was just like a constant kind of ongoing joke of ours. Like, what do we do? I mean, we bought Amazon out of jars. We got to the point where we had bought so many that Amazon's, you know, lead in time for delivery was like 2-3 days. Then it became a week. Then it became like several weeks. Then it was like, we had to go find someplace else to get them, you know, awesome. Like there's some crazy stories. Like when this contract got signed, actually the backstory to that is we had success ticking along on social platforms and we started to get to the point where we were selling 400 or 500 a day pretty regularly on there. And then one morning she got up and there were 6 sales and she was like, 6, that's it. Like, how is there only 6? You know, cause we were used to by that time in the morning being at least 100. And then so like, you know, the fear takes over like, oh my gosh, but like, you know, is this the end? What if it's not gonna keep going? Was this just a fad? You know, like all these questions. And, you know, we're having these discussions saying, what if it's a setup? Like, what if God is planning to release some massive blessing that we wouldn't be prepared to receive if we couldn't slow down enough to get ready for it? Literally hours after we had that conversation, I come in to the shop and she's crying because we just got off the phone with the social platform that made a $2.2 million order of 41,000 units. Then I go and rent a U-Haul truck and I drive to 3 different Costco's to pick up one of the ingredients we need. I drop those back at the shop and they say, we got this many jars coming from this vendor, but we need more. And they have some down at a shop in Cincinnati. And I'm like, great, I'll turn around and drive there now. And I just go straight down, and they're loading up 6,000 jars in the back of a U-Haul truck. I spent an entire day driving all over Dayton and Cincinnati, getting supplies in a U-Haul truck.
Right.
The next day after this happened, it was just like,
and no pictures.
yeah, limited. Yeah, right.
You should go back like now.
We have a thermometer.
Yeah, that's true. We do have the thermometer of our goal and how many, because we had to do it in, I mean, basically they wanted them in 2 weeks. And it was one of those things where it's like an entrepreneur, right? You go, this is the entrepreneurial way, right? This is the spirit of the person willing to take risks. They go, well, we think we can sell 41,000 units in 60 days, and we're going to need you to ship those to us, in the next 14 days. Granted, remember, we're selling about 500 to 600 a day at this point. Right. We're like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. 100%.
And then we get off the phone and we're like,
how do we do that?
Can we do that? It's like, we got to find a way to do that.
I'd be mad at you if you guys did do it that way.
Yeah.
Like that's the cool part of the story is that like, there's so many people that are so scared. They live in that fear. They're just like, oh my gosh, I can't say yes to this. So if I say yes to this, what if I can't do it? Well, if you don't say yes to it, you'll never know. You'll never know if you can do it or not.
You're also not giving God the opportunity to show up if you don't take a risk, you know? I mean, if you're always just kind of hanging out in the space that you can accomplish that which you've set yourself to do, you're not really giving God room to show up in a way that's like, well, I could have never done that. Like, that has to be God, because I don't have that capacity.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what, it's funny you say that, man, because I think like, man, and it's going to be real vulnerable for our business, but I think that like, I've got away from that where I'm like, I used to tell everybody that I want this business to be so big that people would have to know God's in it. And then like we hit some bumps in the road and like, and man, when you get hit in the chin over and over and over, it's hard to say like, man, I'm going to put it back out there.
Yep.
And like I feel like we're in a season right now. Like there's a lot of, I mean, like I can buy this cord and your watch, and I'm a roofer.
Right.
So there's tons of roofers, and we feel like God is kind of like pulling us into another business that we're going to release soon. But for a while there, man, I stopped dreaming. And like, what about you guys? I mean, was there a time where you kind of were scared to dream a little bit more?
So we're currently in a slower season right now, and probably the slowest that it's been since the beginning. And there's a lot of thought processes around that, right? Like we went from 0 to 1 million in a couple of months. So the systems that we needed to have in place and the processes that we needed to have in place weren't necessarily there, right? So one of the schools of thought is, okay, is this God saying, okay, you need to get some things in place so that, again, you're ready for what's coming next. Or, like just be grateful for the big and the small, right? So it's a lot of it's a lot of just sitting and going, because honestly, like my biggest come from always is like, I don't want to do anything wrong. Like the Lord has blessed me with this amazing blessing, and oh my gosh, like I don't want to screw it up, and I don't want to like mismanage his, blessing, and like I don't want to do anything wrong. And so I've functioned from that place for a very long time. But also not probably been in command and in the driver's seat as much as I should have been. Because I'm working from a place of, I don't want to screw it up. You know what I mean?
So it's like a fear or nervousness or worry.
Yeah.
There's such a mindset to it though, really like I think as she started to say there, right? Like it's a mindset, and your mindset, some of that's just a choice you make, right? So we could be going, the reality is we are going through a season currently and have seen this happen over the last couple months where we are going through a season of slowing down from a business and revenue and production, sales standpoint. So again, you can begin to start to get fearful. Oh no, but oh my gosh, but we've got to.
Everybody in the world's calling me. Sorry.
We've got to do all these things to protect, and you could get very lack mindset oriented, scared mindset oriented, very worried, and it's not that I think you should not be aware of those things and have like responsible approaches related to them, but the mindset of where you're fixing your mind, right? You don't ever want to stop taking your mind off of like the viewpoint that things can and will get bigger. Like, oh, like I said, I go back to when we're going through the season. Remember the last time we woke up and there were 6 orders, and remember God was setting us up for a massive blessing. And so my mindset I try to keep coming back to, well, would we be getting systems in place in the business that need to be there to ensure that quality is in control, where we have an opportunity to learn from previous mistakes, where at one point we ramped up and had 18,000 units already ready to go in boxes. And I'm going, we're only selling like, I think at the time it was like 3,000 a week or something. Why do we have 5 weeks worth of product already put in boxes? Like, and then we find out, oh, like
we needed to change.
We needed to change the process because like they were leaking. And so now we have to add a safety seal. So now we have to go and unbox 18,000 units, redo this whole procedure. So just things like that, right? Like having the process slow down a bit for a bit gives us the opportunity and the space and time to like get those things organized. And also we are, and this circles back somewhat to what I do for a living, right? Like the Lord has put on my heart that the responsibility of stewardship. And so the responsibility of stewardship falls under a lot of categories, right? And biblically speaking, it's talents as well, right? It's not just about money, but my world as a financial advisor circles around the financial part of stewardship. So my wife and I on our journey went through our own seasons where we had to recognize our lack of proper stewardship in our personal financials. So
it's rough to look
we went through a season of very scary stuff, right? Where it was like, wow, we might literally have to sell our house. We might have to make some very big changes. But we had, if we're looking back and being honest, we hadn't really been very good not that we weren't generous. We were generous people. We were very giving, and we were tithing and offering and stuff like that. But stewardship, we were not stewarding the resources really well. So we went through a season of relative lack that forced us to be better stewards, so that when this blessing came, we have absolutely been excellent stewards on the personal side of our life with this blessing. But if we're being completely honest, now going through the business cycle where things have slowed down, we're looking and going, oh wow, we really haven't been stewarding this as well as we should be. Like there's areas where we're really allowed things to be too loose, or we haven't been as focused on this as we should have been. So some of that's that process.
Yeah. And like you were kind of alluding to, like, actually this was on my heart a while ago. Like, when we talked Sunday and we said we're going to do this podcast, I was like, man, like something that like I noticed that I've done is because I felt like I wasn't enough to run my company.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like, and then in that, like I've allowed other people to like step in.
Yep.
And it's been bad.
Yeah.
And like the thing about it is like, I was like, man, I didn't call them
correct
to run this company. I called you to.
I tell you that
Amen.
has hit me like a brick in the head within this last 7 to 10 days.
Yeah. I mean, and I keep like think we should talk about that more.
Yeah. So
because I don't think
you
that
asked
you should
initially. You asked initially, how do you get past the mindset of like I'm not enough? And I like to cry, so I might.
Yeah, let's do it. It's good for ratings. Get some subscribers.
But I tell you, I was challenged immensely with this business and this blessing because I didn't understand why it was for me.
Right.
And up until probably about 2 weeks ago, and we've been in business for 10 months, I have been taking advice from other people that I have felt knew way more than I did. And for a short season, they probably did. But what I've realized recently is I know some things too.
Yeah.
And this is my business, and this is the business that the Lord gave me. He didn't even give it to my husband. Like he gave it to me.
Right.
So this is my job. Like this is my job to steward, and this is my job to make sure that whatever decisions are made, they're mine, because at the end of the day, I'm the one left holding the bag, and I'm going to be the one that's accountable to the Lord. Like, it's not going to be my husband. It's not going to be anybody that works for me. It's going to be me. And so that's been a huge growth and learning process for me, because I've honestly prayed just like, Lord, give me your courage and your confidence. And it's not because I typically lack that so much, but more so that I do have some knowledge, right? And that it's okay for me to stand on what I do know, or at least what I feel convicted about. And so,
yeah, I think that's huge, the conviction of it.
Yeah.
What would you say to, like, okay, so say there's a young lady watching this, or a young entrepreneur watching this, and they're like, man, I need to get, like, because this is what happened to me. Like, I got to a certain point and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can get this any bigger, but it was getting bigger. I mean, we had done $4 million, and then we're like on track to do more. And then I'm like, dude, this might be too big for me. And I started like just questioning myself, and I'm like, oh, dude, you don't know how, you're just a dumb firefighter that used to fight and beat people up, and like all this stuff started coming in, and then I was like, what if I can't do this? So I searched out like somebody I thought that could, and I brought them into our company. It was a horrible mistake. I gave them way too much power, way too much of what my responsibility was, and it choked. I mean, we lost $2 million in revenue. And the culture was completely trashed in our business. And then I got a little bit of freedom out of it, and I felt comfortable because I could blame somebody.
Oh, sure.
Because I'm like, oh, it's their fault. Like,
not my decision.
John. I was going to say the name, but he's making the decisions, and I could blame them, and that was his fault, And I don't know if I needed that security blanket, but I definitely needed to know that, like, right now, like, nobody loves my company like I do. Because your company's like a kid. I mean, like, you're a financial company, like Genesis, like, they're like kids. And like, before you bring somebody in and let somebody watch your kid. Raise your kid.
It was said to us, nobody's going to die for your company. No. Like, it doesn't matter who you've got with you. No one else is going to die for your company.
Nobody's going to lay on the railroad tracks.
Lay on the tracks for your company except you. You carry all the risk. And circling back to some of that too, is saying, is like, whenever we went from, 500-600 units a day in her business, stuff like that, right, into then, 100 a day or less than 100 a day on certain platforms. And it's like, what's going on here? Like, and there's market aspects that have to do with that. You look at, there's more competitors. There's counterfeiters. There's all these things like in the world, right? But I always kind of go back to like, well, wait a minute, this was the Lord's blessing. So what is the Lord doing here? Because the Lord could make our product rise to the top in every single search engine all the time. Like, the Lord could, if someone's trying to attack us with a counterfeit product, could make sure that failed to upload, right? So there's nothing outside the sovereignty of the Lord. So then we start thinking, this is sort of me circling back to telling her, it's like, well, wait a minute. This is the Lord's gift and blessing to you, not to me, not to the other people in our company. Yes, it's blessing others through that, but this is your blessing. So what's going on here, and the reason that I believe there's an aspect of the reason that the business is going through a slower season right now, is because it stopped being her vision. It stopped being her, like, every aspect of the company should reflect what she believes to be the right process, the right mentality, the right pace, the right marketing strategy, the right budget, everything, because the Lord trusts her with that blessing, trusts her with that responsibility. So she should take feedback. She should be open to hearing ideas. And you don't want to surround yourself with a bunch of yes men, because you do want people that are going to challenge your thinking. But ultimately, the final decision has always got to be hers. And similar, like she said, and it sounds like you experienced too, which is you start to kind of feel like, oh, do I know what I'm doing? I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, these people think like they know what to do. Oh, I'll listen to what they're saying. And
I think I heard you say that before.
Some part inside of you, some part inside of her going, I just don't think I really think that's the best way to do it. I don't really agree with that.
There were several times where I made a decision because, like, I can point to a couple. Now, there were times where I needed to be challenged, and that was the right decision as well. But there are a few decisions that I made against my better judgment.
She never felt good about it.
And they're not the best decisions.
And they're part of the reason that we're having issues now with the structure of certain aspects of our company. It's like, well, that wouldn't even be a problem if you would have followed your conviction then and never been like, nope, we're not doing that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So
many times.
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah. And that's where the whole hindsight's 2020, right? Like, in the midst of all that, like, we're running around, hair's on fire, praise God, and we're learning by fire hose, and I'm
hiring anybody with a pulse.
Yeah,
like, that's
legit.
fine. Come on in, just do it. It's like,
you don't, I don't ever think you know what you don't know. And you can search for the entire world for somebody to tell you what they know, but it's never going to be what you probably need to know. Like, you need to know what you need to know. And the only way to know that is to go through it, I think. And yes, you want to surround yourself with wise counsel, and you want to, have support and mentors and things like that. I think all of those things are important, but I do genuinely think, like, I think we all have this internal, like, gut
it's
register.
like an intuition. Yeah.
Where you're like anytime something's like, you got to pay attention to those things. And maybe it's because you need to be challenged. Maybe it's because it's just not the best decision.
I also think the discernment piece is challenging in those situations, right? Because this is where we try to help each other navigate this, or the sounding board that I try to be to help her in that process is some of those like intuitions or like gut feelings or something. Recognizing, is it fear? Is it a fear? And is it a fear based on previous trauma or a life story or something within you that's actually something that is just going to hold you back, versus an intuition that is more like, it's not fear driven. And the main decision that, we made back at that time, it wasn't fear driven at all. It was just a fundamental decision that you kind of had this thing like, I'm not for that. That wasn't a fear decision. Mm-hmm. Like the ordering of jars from China, and that was more of a fearful decision because logically it made sense in the context of what was going on in the company. So it's that trying to discern that difference between the voice within you that is like conviction and God driven and is the gift you have, which is why you've been given this gift, right? And this responsibility, versus the voice of the enemy, which, likes to be noisy too. So,
And it's hard. I mean, it's super hard to like, so this is the funny thing. Like Sherry always laughs because like, and if anybody's, like watching this that works at Patriot, like you guys are going to see the raw stuff. By 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm ready to fire everybody. Like I've already talked myself into a frenzy. Yep. We get up at 5:30, like Sherry and I like have our coffee, and by 7 o'clock, Sherry's talking me off the ledge because I'm like, no, they're not doing this. Sales aren't where they're supposed to be. This person,
I can be with you at 7 a.m.
Conversation is like I've already, and then I call people and they're like, oh no, we have a project today and we've done this, and like the project manager's out there, and this is getting taken care of, and I'm like, I'll be in the office later. And it's like. By 7 o'clock, it's like, I am just like
wound up.
Yeah, I am. And it's like, and it's because I care so much about it. Like, and I know you guys do too. We have families that count on us.
Oh, yes. Yep.
That is a heavy burden to bear.
Yeah.
Yep. And like, that's been, even hiring people, like even something as basic as hiring people, right? Like that was something that was so huge to me because I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is how I was in the beginning. This is just the truth. Like, what do you mean you're going to quit your real job and come work here? Like, and
we've been in existence for like 2.5, 3 months. She's like, this is like,
and like people were quitting jobs that like they weren't making $10 an hour. Like they were salaried people. And I'm like, what are you doing? But they were willing to take a risk in that, and praise God for them. I'm super grateful for that. But at the same time, like all of that stuff is a mentality, right? Like now I wouldn't ever sit down with somebody and go, what are you thinking? You know what I mean?
Now I'm more thinking
Now
to
I'm
myself,
more like,
what am I thinking? What am I doing
like,
here?
these are the expectations that I have for you. This is what I know that I need you to meet daily, you know, versus like, oh, great, you want to help and you have breath in your lungs? Awesome, great, you know.
And what do I do?
Right. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I don't know. That was the big thing when people start here. They're like, well, what do I do? I'm like, go sell roofs.
You're right,
like,
right.
How? I'm like,
I don't know. You go talk to people.
Knock on doors, I guess.
Just go do it.
Right.
Bro.
Yeah.
You're supposed to know that part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
They're like, you're going to train me? We're like,
Training.
come on, man. Like, I barely have t-shirts.
It's like, it's like
right.
training. Hell, I just jumped on YouTube. What do you mean training? Look at YouTube videos.
Right.
And then that's when you fail. But then you sit back and you look at things and you're like, holy cow. Like I drive around like Dayton, Xenia. I drive around these places and I see like, it was funny. We were driving the other day and we seen like our logo like on t-shirts.
Yep.
And we're like, holy cow. Like we don't even know who these people are, but like they have our logos on their t-shirts, you know, and it just.
Well, those are the things that I think started to also like really blow my mind, or like just different things. Like for selling internationally, first off, was insanity to me. Like that happened within a few months.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah. So that I think was very weird. Like it's awesome, but it was like, holy crap, like that's crazy. And then like, you know, people going to visit other people and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of this company. And like they're in Washington or California or Texas or.
Yeah, we were, Sherry and I were somewhere and somebody had your product.
Yeah.
I think we're at a conference in Texas.
That's amazing.
And somebody had your product. We're like, we know them. You're like, you know the people from Genesis? We're like, yes.
Yes, we go to church with them.
Yeah.
We're like, holy cow, she's famous.
Yeah, it's some of our employees did some farmers markets and some like trade shows and stuff the last couple of months, and my son also works for us, but he was there and he called me and he's like, Mom, this is so crazy. He's like, people know who you are.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
They see your picture. I'm like, oh, I know that girl. I've seen her on TikTok.
Crazy. So it's been an amazing journey. It's been awesome.
So in that, we're going to talk about some cons as well.
Yeah.
So we've talked about some pros, we've talked about some cons, but like you had talked about hiring. Mm-hmm. And like in charge, he was way more like, you know, he doesn't fit our bill, where I'm just like, I can, because like my problem, I see the good in people.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, if I gave them a chance,
Yep.
like I could
I know
really
they
bring
can.
that out of
Yep.
them.
Yep.
And then it bites me almost every time.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know how many, I think my wife said I'm in the business of giving t-shirts out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how many t-shirts we've given away. You know, I look and I'm like, and I start thinking I'm a failure. And I'm like, man, why are people not working out? Like, I know this works. I know that there's people that make money. I mean, like we had a guy that he was a youth pastor, and he came and within like 6 months was well on his way to making over 100K.
Wow.
And then at the end of that year, he made 120 or 130.
Right.
You know, more money than he's ever made in his life. So I know it works even for people that don't have like knowledge on roofing or whatever. But I'm like, why doesn't it work for everybody? Mm-hmm. You know, and then I start feeling like a failure. And
yeah, I feel like, and again, I've had some conversations over the last couple of weeks with some people that have really just opened my eyes to some things. But, you know, one of the things that was said is, at the end of the day, if the whole business blows up, you're the one that's on the train tracks and everybody else is going, oh, okay, cool, I'll go get another job.
Right.
And you're not. Like, you're going.
You're the one who has, 2 facilities with 3 years worth of lease, lease contracts.
Right.
You're on the hook for that money. Like nobody else is. They're going to go find another job, another company. Like,
and so even that shift in mentality was like, yeah, like, you're right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I've also learned people are interesting. Like, I think people will sit down with you and they will tell you all the wonderful things that you want to hear. And then they'll come to work and they'll kill it for a little bit. And then the real person kind of shows up and, you know, then you're like, wait a minute, what happened to the guy or the girl that I interviewed that was like, I'm amazing and I can kill it? And you're going, you aren't at work all the time. Like, what happened?
I think that we try to I think we get motivation and drive mixed up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that when people come in, like, we're like, oh my gosh, they're
motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And we mistake that as drive.
Good point.
And then we hire off that motivation. And then we realize that they don't have any drive. Like,
Right.
where you're a very driven person, you're a very driven person. And like, you're like, we got to get this going. Like, I'm super driven because I have like plans.
Yeah.
And I think we mistake that for that motivation.
Well, it's so interesting too, is like to your point as well, actually, the characteristics that make for someone who interviews well do not necessarily equate to somebody who is a quality employee in the same way, right? So
Right.
interestingly, we've observed almost like this weird dichotomy, and it depends on your industry, right? Obviously, sales is different, right? So if you're in a sales-based industry, you want someone who's charismatic, somebody who
Been to jail.
yeah. In a sales-based environment, somebody who interviews well is selling themselves in the interview. So if they can turn that into the interaction with the customer that they have to face forward with, or selling roofs, right? So that would be a quality you would think would translate into sales. But production or managing of people, or those are different skill sets. And so what I think we're learning through her business, again, this is not related to mine because I don't work in that way, although I could speak to that in terms of working with clients, because that's a client relationship where I've learned over the years the type of client to be wary of in terms of that dynamic. But I think for us, it's going, oh, okay, so there's different aspects of this hierarchy structure in this company, right? You got managers that manage people. Okay, so that's a certain type of mentality, right? Somebody who can build a relationship, but is totally fine to like be blunt and honest and doesn't really care if they're being offensive, but if they've built a strong relationship with the employees, the employee respects them, right? Mm-hmm. Then you've got production if you're manufacturing and producing things, which is part of our aspect of our business. That's a totally different aspect. They could be the least personable human on the planet that is awkward around everybody, but super focused and very, very diligent in the industry of production, you know? So that's what I think has been a revelation for us somewhat. Like I said, when we started, and it was so fast, so crazy. Like, if you can come, you can do the job. Like, I don't care. You know, just come in and work, you know? And it's like, we needed so many people. And now we're going, oh, actually, okay. Like, that's interesting, right? But
we need a specific type of person for this. And we need a specific type of person for that.
Yeah. And also it's like, we're realizing now, like, oh, like, I don't know if that person actually knows what the expectations of them even are.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the evaluation we're kind of going through now, is like, we should probably ask the employee, what do you do in a given day, and what do you feel the expectations of you are?
That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
I think that's a failure of that's the failure of the CEO. If it's not been, if they come back to you and go, well, this, and you're going, it's actually none of that.
Right.
Well, that's where I've failed.
Right.
Yeah.
As a person who manages this company.
Yeah. We're huge on expectations now, because I was always like, man, go do the work.
Yeah. And
people are like, well, what am I getting paid? And you're like, oh, I'll take care of you. Mm-hmm. And like in my heart, like I really plan to take care of them. You know, I'm like, oh, I'm going to take care of you. Like I'm going to look at, you work for me.
Yep.
I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. Well, if they expect something different,
Yep.
you know, like, then you're kind of screwed.
Yep.
I mean, you're just like, oh my gosh, well, I just said I would take care of you. I didn't lay out exactly.
Well, and what we've learned is, in that same vein, is even when you do lay it out, there's like, yeah, and what else? Yeah. Oh, I mean, I tell you, we take care of our people, and I am very, very grateful that we do, and they have worked hard and we have been blessed to do so. But sometimes it's been like, wait a minute, like what?
Yeah.
Well, it's people, right? I mean, just like you said, we don't believe that as the ones who run the company that we're immune from mistakes and downfalls. Like I said, if the staff member can't accurately portray back to you specifically what's expected of them, that's our failure, right? So their productivity, we may look at what they do and go, man, they're all over the place. Or they're not because you have in your mind what your expectation is, but you're thinking they know, but they don't know. Well, that's my failure. So they might look like a bad employee, but in reality, it's just that I haven't accurately disseminated to them what they need to know. And then when you do, then you get to see, do they get on board with it? Right. So it's not like we're immune from that either, but at the same time, people are people, right? So what you're going to learn when you create a culture or an opportunity for your staff, right? We want to be generous people, right? You said, I'm a very compassionate person. Okay, so are we, right? We're Christians, we're compassionate. We want to see the best. We want to provide an environment for good people. But if you have a policy that from your heart is a policy designed to support your staff in a certain way, in the back of your mind, you never think of somebody like taking advantage of it, right? But then
100%.
Humans are flawed, right? So then some things come up, the rubber hits the road, a couple situations come up, and all of a sudden you're going, well, that kind of stinks.
Yeah.
We put this in place for this specific reason. That person's straight up taking advantage of it.
And honestly, they're not even doing anything wrong.
They're not even doing anything wrong because that's
the policy we put in place, right?
But it's like you go, okay, well, that's not going to work now. That's not going to work anymore.
We got to change that.
We can't have that happening. So that's just interesting. Those are just things
part of the learning process,
right?
I
Exactly.
think, too.
Right.
And the cool thing is like, and I tell people, I'm like, people are like, oh my gosh, you got a business, man. Like, I don't know anything about business. I'm like, bet. Neither do I.
Right.
Guess what I'm learning?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's what I think is such a that has been probably the biggest light bulb for me is like, oh, nobody totally has this figured out.
No.
Like,
not at
and
all.
I think that from the outside perspective, the assumption is, oh my gosh, they've got it all figured out. They had this plan and the plan went A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it doesn't, it goes A to Z to M to Q to it's a whole alphabet soup mess. And like, you're going, okay, Lord, I'm along for the ride.
I'd just about be willing to bet you that the majority of small business owners, right, that have achieved any amount of measurable, reasonable success, I bet you most of them could circle back to the beginnings of it and go, I actually didn't have any clue what I was doing. We've talked to other people who we know have been successful, and we hear their stories, and this one individual in mind had a t-shirt company, right? And it was like, doing all these things, and it was like, again, somebody came along and was like, oh, we want to do, X amount. And he's like, yeah, we can, we'll do that. And no idea how he's going to do it. Doing it out of his garage. A truck couldn't even fit down the alley to offload supplies. And he's like, yeah, I can do that. Like fumbling their way through it, and it's like, that is though the spirit of the entrepreneur that, and this is the other piece that I think bears like consideration or bears saying, which is, similarly, right? People see the success that you get to.
Yeah.
Then there's judgments made about that, but not appreciating the incredible amounts of risk taken to get there, right? Like, and just all these things that you did and put yourself out there in ways that you really could have failed and failed hard. I mean,
the average time for overnight success is 5 years.
Yeah.
People are like, oh my gosh, they got famous
success.
They got rich overnight. Yeah, it's 5 years.
Well,
of you
we
just
talk about how fast this company has been successful, right? This has been a very interesting thing to talk to our children about, in particular our middle child, who's very into like e-commerce and drop shipping and studying all these things, and you could see the engine in his mind is going, they're young, right? So he's going, oh, I do this and I'm going to be rich quick, right? Exactly. And I'm like, because you see that in 10 months, in really just the first 3 or 4 months, went from this inception to this crazy the amount of volume and revenues and stuff like that. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like, no, actually, that story starts when you quit your job as a banker.
In 2015.
Yeah. That's
so
a
9 years.
9-year success story with
Right.
two failed businesses
Yep.
in the
Right.
middle of closing down and going, wow, I thought that was going to take off and it just didn't.
Yep.
And
You get rich overnight.
yeah, exactly right.
9 years of nights.
Right.
So that's the other piece. It's like, because really, truly, this wouldn't be in existence if not for the 9 years of training, personal development, trying this thing, it failed, going, wow, that really stinks. Then recovering from the failure, right? And then overcoming your fear that you'll fail again, and then failing again, and then,
That's what a lot of people a lot of people that we want to get across to is that's it. Like, you have to put yourself out there. And if you fail, you fail. Like,
keep pushing.
I think I started, like, my whole entrepreneur, like, kind of jabbing at businesses. I started with a crime scene clean business. Me and my buddy were like, hey man, we're going to, like, I'm like, dude, you're a cop.
That's crazy.
Like, you can call me, like, when somebody shoots themselves, and I'll come clean it up.
Come clean up the blood. I'm not bothered by it.
Like, I'm putting, like, brains in, like, bags, and, like, and I'm just, like, throwing them in, like, Burger King's dumpster. Like, I'm 100% true. Like, I literally was, like, running down the street and getting buckets of water at this house that I found at 2:00 in the morning. This, like, I'm like stealing water from this person and dumping, like, where there was a car accident and there's, like, blood all over the street. And they
her dad's been in sales his whole life. It started by selling moonshine out the back of the Arby's drive-through, 1970s.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so it's crazy, and then like that didn't work out. I mean, because obviously you're not allowed to just throw brains in the trash.
Burger King might get a little upset about that.
Jeez, I can't mix the brains with the burger leftovers.
Yeah, and then we had what else? Oh, I did a dog poop business.
Okay.
Had no money,
Right.
and it started being successful. I started going out and picking up dog poop for my buddy that I rented a room off of. And then I started picking up dog poop, and I picked up dog poop for all these people. And I'm like, in this apartment complex, I'm known as like the dog poop dude, right? Like, I'm picking up all this dog poop. And then I didn't have any money. So somebody was like, hey man, I'll buy that from you. I'm like, it's really, I didn't have an LLC or anything. I'm like, yeah. You want to buy like the idea? Because I don't have a truck. I mean, he's like, yeah. It could be like
your
my
clients
business.
and stuff.
So he gave me like $2,500, and I was like, I was broke at the time. I'm like,
I'm rich. I've made it.
I sold my first business.
Yeah, exactly.
$multi-million.
Meanwhile, I drove by on the way to record this podcast, the pet butler in our neighborhood, and it's a full-on business with a guy who comes and cleans up dog poop at people's houses.
The guy that I sold it to, or
Gave it to you for $2,500.
You got paid, and you sold
in Columbus. So he's in Columbus. He's in a bunch of other markets. He has 55 trucks and does $5 million in dog poop.
That's insane.
But I just didn't have the didn't have the vision for it. I didn't have I outside of that little thing, and at that point I wasn't ready.
Right.
Like, I'm just like I'm picking up dog poop and I'm making a couple $100, but like I wasn't ready for what it could be.
Yep.
And I saw a way out, and I'm like, let's do that. And I just and then we did a e-liquid business.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. I was just like, oh my gosh, I can make e-liquid.
Yeah. Okay.
Look it up online. I'm like, bet.
Can do it.
And I bought bottles from China as well. Like, I said, $10,000 of China that I didn't have.
Right.
They sent me bottles back, and then that turned into a whole mess. And then we ended up selling that business for $600 to doing a Honda Civic.
Oh my goodness.
So it went backwards a little bit.
Right.
Another overnight success story.
$15,000 of liquid nicotine I put in the back of this dude's Honda Civic with 10,000 bottles. He had to come back 4 times to get the bottles.
Oh my goodness.
It's overnight success.
Right.
Overnight success story. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's definitely interesting because, it must be nice. Oh, that must be nice. Dude.
Oh, the new shirt coming out?
You have any
The
idea?
shirt coming out. It says, you don't have what it takes for it must be nice.
Oh, I like that.
I like that a
I
lot.
might have to get one of those
Yeah.
because it's.
Okay, because we have friends too. We have friends additional friends that you see, if you're observing from the outside, you see like whatever lifestyle they're choosing, right? It's everybody's individual choice, but you see either they travel a lot or they own nice things or they drive a nice car or whatever, right? And it's easy to, if you don't have a context, you've not walked through your own journey of it, to be like, wow, that must be nice. That must be nice. Geez, like, that's extravagant and all that. But I mean, very few people are handed
Right.
that. Yeah. I mean, and I taught a personal finance, the high school personal finance class for a few years, the Dave Ramsey course. And one of the first things we did in that class, which I loved, was the millionaire quiz. And the kids, these students, would take this quiz, true or false. And the questions were like, most millionaires inherited the money. Most millionaires drive the nicest vehicles and always buy the nicest clothes. Whatever.
False.
Yeah, right. So, but it never ceased to amaze me. Every single class, overwhelmingly, they were wrong, because the mentality is this, right? It's, oh, they got that because either someone handed it to them or they had it easy or whatever. And in reality, no, it's like most of them are entrepreneurs. Most of them took a very long time to get there. Most of them failed multiple times before they got there. Yeah. And actually, Warren Buffett, one of the most famous investment guys in my world, right? One of the most famous investment guys in investments, he has a policy. He will not invest capital into a company if the CEO of that company hasn't failed at least three times previously. Yep. Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just talked to a guy that I know, his mom did she first time in her family that they went out, she was like, I'm not working for this person anymore. I'm going to go start a food truck.
Oh, nice.
They started a food truck. She had it up and running. She was doing stuff. She didn't kind of she didn't know how to grow it. So she was like, she just created a job for herself. And I just seen her and I was just like, oh, how's your food truck going? And she's like, oh, we had to shut it down, and I'm like, man, congratulations. Like, good job, because you did what most people wouldn't even try to do.
Right.
So good, good for you. Even though you shut it down, good for you. But you had so over here, have you guys ever heard of Teddy Roosevelt? The Man in the Arena?
Oh yes. That's like one of my favorite things ever. I love that.
To the cold and timid souls that never even tried.
Yep.
Like they would not know victory or defeat.
Yep.
Because they didn't even try.
Yep.
That's what I say. I'd say, put it out there, try.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you're going to be judged no matter what. That's what I've learned too. Yeah. So if you're succeeding and killing it, people are judging you for that.
If you fail,
if you failed, people are judging you for that. Or if you don't try, you're being you might as well try.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be judged no matter what.
When we were at the firehouse and, we spent a third of our life with these guys.
Yeah.
And for years, Sherry was there for 17 years. I was there for 12 years. And then one day I'm like, I'm quitting. I'm done. I'm out. And I thought I was going to get all this overwhelming support. And everybody's like, you're so stupid. Mm-hmm. You got to get to retirement here. Don't do it. You're dumb. You'll never do it. And then I found out that when I did do that, there was an overwhelming number of people hoping that I would fail.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it validates their limited thinking, right? It validates their limited viewpoint.
Yeah.
I tell you, that's something hard to overcome though too, right? I think we have our own, right? Yeah. This has been my journey. I quit my job. I was in corporate America for 20 years. Quit my job at 37 so I could go find myself, right? Because that's what you do at 37 after you're married and have kids.
Well, you do that at 37 if you didn't do it when you were 18,
that's true.
19,
I did not
which is
do
when
that.
I did it.
But I did not do that.
I'm trying to find myself $6,000.
I'm still trying to find myself.
So, that I think is part of the biggest struggle is getting past your own limited thinking. And I think you said this early on too, right? Oh my gosh, I could never do that, or I'm not worthy to do that, or who am I, right? Yeah. Who am I to, all of these things. And, I've done all the things. I can self-help myself into all the things. And I teach that to a lot of people too. But, man, I tell you, if you can just stand on your own 2 feet and feel the ground underneath you and know that you're created for a purpose and that you just, it's not to just sit.
Yeah. And it's not even so many people think they're created for a purpose, but and that's why I came up with it, not just.
Yeah,
I'm actually writing a book. I don't know. Like I said, I can't even hardly read. Awesome. I said that, and Rachel was like, "You can't read." Somebody that actually watched this, but yeah, I can read some.
That's what ChatGPT is for.
Yeah, just get that going. I like to speak into the mic like that. Makes it sound cool. I forgot what I was going to say.
You were
Not
saying
just, you said that's
No.
why
Yeah,
you started.
not just because like, not only are we confined by like our space, but like God has made us to be so much. And I believe that God's looking down on us like, dude, I didn't create you just to do that.
Yep.
Like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, that's fantastic. You got a good job, but I didn't create you just to do that. Like, there's so much more.
And I think there's seasons, right? Like there's seasons for, yep, you get to just do this. And then there's seasons for, you get to do all this. And then there's a season for like, you know what? You get to just do this.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that. Like I quit my job and I was like, what am I going to be, just a mom? And like, I would tell everybody in the entire world, yes, focus on that job because it's insanely huge.
I can't be a mom.
Well, all the women.
Sure, JP.
If I want to be. That's
Might
a
be able
whole
to be a
other,
vegetable if you want.
a whole other
I
podcast.
think women especially struggle with that because there's so much societal junk, but like we have all of these, like, we're never good enough for anything, right? Like we're only just a mom, or like we're a mom and we
Or if
have
you're
a
a great
career.
CEO, then you're not a good mom
Right.
because you don't have time for your children.
Right. I mean, it's all the thing. Like you're always judged, so it doesn't matter. But I love that. Like, I think that there are seasons, and you have to be obedient in the season that you're in. And I was challenged by that so much.
Oh, so like I said, we're being honest.
Yeah.
I'm like hugely challenged about that right now. I've always, since I gave my life back to Christ, like I've always felt like I've had this connection with God, and I kind of feel like I've known where. And then like I've sought out, like the other day, Steve and I went to lunch and Sherry was there too. And I'm like, Steve just thought he was going to lunch, and I was like, bro, like, I'm like, you ever feel like you're not connected, like God's not speaking to you right now? And like, that's where I feel like in our business, and like all these people are like, bro, you're like right on the edge. I feel like you're getting ready to turn the corner. And I'm like, and these people are speaking this over my life, and they're like, man, like something is about to hit for you. And I'm like, but I don't feel connected to God. And I'm like, and I'm wondering if that's like God, like, man, I'm going to prepare you. Cause when Jesus got sent out to the wilderness, it says that, and this is credit to Steve was telling me about this, and he was like, man, he's like, the Holy Spirit led him to the wilderness.
Yeah.
After that, Jesus continued to pray, and continue to pray, and continue to pray, and continue to pray. But it never says that God talked back to him. And so if you do the research, the wilderness that he was led into is the harshest place on the planet.
Yeah.
It's from one extreme to the next. And he was out there and completely disconnected from God. And God, he had to go through all that stuff, like you were saying earlier, so that he can reach this new his ministry.
Right.
Oh, it's after the 40 days that he was led out into the wilderness that then he was tested, right? That's when Satan came and tested him. He knew he was at his weakest point. He knew I don't know that I would say fears that Jesus had, but he knew he hadn't eaten in 40 days. So
I definitely knew the temptations.
Yeah. He knew the temptations would be most likely to be succumbed to, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'll turn the rocks into bread, right? Like the whole, like, oh, it's this hunger, I'll make you, the master of this whole domain, all these kinds of things, right? Like it's just, and so when we get into seasons, like you're vocalized, you're in, like in some aspects of her business, we're finding ourselves experiencing for the first time. So I was like, okay, Lord, like what are we supposed to be seeking right now? What have we not been obedient to that we need to be obedient to? Or maybe it is literally just understand this is where I have you and trust that it's for a greater purpose.
Yeah.
It could be protecting you.
Right. How many times
From
have you guys-
yourself,
How many times have you brought your kids inside? You're like, listen, your face is red.
Yep.
You've been running around too much.
Yep.
Sit down.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to sit down. You're like, just
Right. Or go to bed. You need some rest.
Yeah.
How many times, and we
You're right.
overlook
Great
that. We're
point.
just like, oh my gosh, like I got to keep going. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. And you're just like,
No,
you're like,
you actually
bro, like,
need to rest right now and reset.
And we'll bring our kids in and we'll sit them down.
Yep.
No,
Yep.
you sit down, go get some water,
Yep.
sit on a couch.
Yep.
But we don't think God does that for
Right.
us.
Right.
Very good.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
it's so crazy that Like we don't.
Well, and we're like the kids, right? We're like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
But,
Yeah.
right. But what about this? But what about this? But what about that? You don't think I got all that covered?
And seriously, like whenever they are that tired, how productive are they being?
Oh,
They're
completely.
babbling
Yeah.
messes. They
Right.
can't make
Yeah.
good decisions.
Yep.
right.
Same thing with
Can't
us.
control their temper.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Same
Mean
thing
to
with us.
people.
Right.
Dude, it's so great you say that because like I've been through that season, and like now I told Joey and I were driving. I'm like, dude, I'm like, I feel so calm. Like I feel like.
Except at 7 a.m. when you want to fire everybody. After that, you're good.
Even this morning, I got up at 5:30. I was like driving. I only wanted to fire one person today.
That's great. That was a huge improvement.
Step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, we're just leaps and bounds. But yeah, but it's just you have that.
Yeah.
And it's funny that like I look a lot in business and in like my spiritual walk on like how I treat my kids. Because I'm like, man, I will punish my kid in a second if I think that they're going to be a bad kid.
Yep.
I'm like, you're not going to be a bad human.
Right.
But we don't think God will do it to us.
Right. Right.
We're like, when God's like, watch out.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh.
And we're gonna try
Well,
this.
and it's on the other side of it too, kind of circling back to something my wife said earlier, is like she has a tendency to be like, well, I don't want to mess it up. Like, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to do this. So, because some of the things she battled early when the business started going through the season that it's kind of entered in the last month or two is like, what did I do wrong? Like, where did I go wrong? Like, what mistake did I make? Should I not have done this? Should I have not have done that? Should I not have bought this? Should I not have done this thing instead? And you know, maybe I'm being punished for making poor choices. I'm thinking like, well, hold on a minute. Like, actually think about it. Like, we have prayed about every major decision we've made over and over and over. We have sought counsel from wise Christian people. We have a wise Christian tax specialist and we take advice from him. Like, so I'm like, no.
I love that guy, by the way.
Yeah. Thanks for the referral. And it's like, it's that whole scripture. Like, if you who are evil know how to give good things to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give to you? And it's like, God's not sitting down there going, well, actually, Chad actually he brings this up and he said this to me just recently again. He said, like, if my daughter is outside and collects a bundle of poison ivy and brings it in and is like, Daddy, I got this for you. And it's a bundle of poison ivy.
Yeah.
In her mind, she's trying to do the right thing. She's trying to be generous. She brought you a bundle of, and it's like you make you break out and it's the wrong thing. Oh, honey, no. Like, that's bad. Like, would you scold her for that?
Right.
Or would you be like, no, oh, thank you so much. It's so wonderful. By the way, this will make you break out. Yeah, and you get, but that's the thing, right? If God knows your heart and if your intentions are to please him and your intentions are to honor him and glorify him, and even if you make mistakes, because you're not going to get it right all the time, whether it be a business owner or in your personal life, right? We're flawed. We're humans. We make mistakes, right? We have tendencies that are from generational curses or our own traumas in life, right? That we fall back into constantly because we're broken. But if your intentions are always recircling, refocusing, trying to honor the Lord, doing the right thing, right? God's going to reward that. Of course he is. He's a good father. He's a loving, caring father. God is love by definition.
Yeah. And I think with that, I think the key thing is obedience. And that, because Zua, what is that? Azua, or the guy that reached out for the ark, God told him, don't touch the ark. His intentions were good.
Yeah.
But God told him not to touch him. And as soon as he touched it, bang, he died.
Yeah.
So
that's Old Testament God, though.
I like Old Testament God.
Yeah.
I need some more Old Testament God in my mentality, right?
And in that, I think that if we're obedient, and if we are 100% obedient, like I think that in that time, and I think too many people think that like waiting is, and I know that everybody's used this analogy, but like your waiter like is working the whole time to serve you. And I think that's what we should do. And that's what I've tried to do in this season where I've not felt like, I've only felt little glimpses of God. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And, you know, and I've tried to be there and I've been there for other people, you know, cause I'm like, man, like I should be serving like in this time where I'm waiting for God to do something in our business.
Yep.
And like, you know, like business is slow right now.
I think it is for everybody.
Yeah. Like our business is slow.
Yeah.
So I mean, what do you do when a business is slow? We dropped $100K on a new business venture.
Right.
What do you do?
Right.
So it's like, yeah, we'll hope that works.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Oops.
If business is slow, we'll just pour gas on it.
Oh, by the way, I got some gas in my garage. You want to come back up?
That's right.
Sold the house.
I was supposed
grab
to come
that.
pick it
Yeah,
up.
it's fine. It's still there. You can still have it.
I'll come
Just
get
in case you need to,
Yeah, in case I need to get that inferno
I
going.
think, yeah, I think that the waiting is hard, right? Like, I know that the Lord is constantly working through me, on me with trust. Like, I can have some trust issues, like you don't even know. And so the Lord works with me on that a lot. And patience, like, I want to do something and I want it done yesterday and I want it done the way that I want to do it.
And trust connects to faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
So scriptures are really clear about you cannot please God without faith, right? Like that's the trust piece, right? And separating your own personal journey with trust, which is in the worldly journey, your trust has been broken by everybody who it never should have been broken by, right? So where the mistake we make is when we transfer that to God, right? And in reality, if we look at the places in our journey where we really needed God in a big way, man, did he ever show up? He exceeded every expectation we could have ever had. So who has earned trust more than the Lord himself, right? So that faith but that's the hardest part, right? And when things are going great, you don't ever need faith. Like things are just cruising along and business is successful and employees are happy and great and they're all doing great and everything's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Faith is never exercised. The muscles never worked. And I've said, and I know we've been in men's groups together, I've said that's one of the great paradoxes of the journey of choosing the Lord. It's just, when you enter that, you are in for seasons of hurt and pain and lack and struggle and challenge, because that is where the relationship is built. The intimate relationship is built there. It's not built on the mountaintop. Nobody wants to experience the valleys, but I'm sorry, that's where the relationship is locked in, and you can say that about probably any relationship of meaningful, like our marriage, started off all happy, yay, woohoo, let's, all these great things. And it's like, but the marriage we have now, after going through difficult times and pressing in and fighting through and crying, and there's so much more depth to it, but it had to go through a lot of really difficult things to get there, And
I think that's where I want to tell you this, like, because I see this in there's a young lady that I mentor, is that you have to trust that you're enough for God, like that you're the one that he chose.
Yep.
Like you're the one that he placed his mantle on. You're the one that he's like, yep, my good and faithful. Like that's what I think that where your trust has to be tried is that I trust that God trusts me enough.
Which is especially difficult when every person in your life has demonstrated the opposite.
Right.
That you haven't been enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty of that in our marriage.
I think for me too is the whole what now my brain's not working, but what's the whole he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
Yeah.
And I think that's the season that I'm in right now is yep, 100% can't do this without him. I just can't.
Right.
I can't do it with anybody else either, but he is the person that I need to do this with. And that's where my focus has not been 100% where it needs to be. And yes, knowing that I'm worthy, that he gave me this, that has been probably the biggest challenge that I have had to try to receive.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, I'm a compassionate person, right? And so these people, they work for me, and we have these, heck, even the products that we make, I don't want to produce anything that doesn't, I don't want people to spend $1 on something that does not work. Right. I don't want somebody to waste their money. I have spent so much of my life trying different things on different things like that. Like, I don't want that for anybody. So I don't ever want to release something that's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that might work.
This is also why the processes, the quality controls, the things that they have to be what you feel is the way to do it and not what someone thinks might be faster. Or, well, that's not really a big deal. If you think it's a big deal, it's a big deal. Yeah. Because you have a quality expectation and an excellence expectation because your conviction is that I don't want anybody to buy anything that's wasted. So if somebody cuts a corner in production environment because they do it all day and they don't really understand the importance of it because it's not their conviction. They're just going, oh, it would be a little bit easier to do it this way. But that reduces the quality of the final product being released. It's like, no. And again, that's where you learn in the process. Like,
but that's where culture comes in.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Like if you have a culture where they know your heart, they know like how important this is to you.
Right.
Like that's super important.
Oh, and those are just things we're learning along the way, right? Like, well, I must not have accurately or sufficiently communicated.
Right. Yeah. I
the
take a lot
conviction
of
why that's so important.
Like if something's not working, ultimately it's my fault, right? Because I didn't communicate well enough that, you know, that, I mean, I'm not pointing, I mean, there are certain things where I can be like, nope, I actually said this and somebody else communicated it differently. There's some different things like that, but mostly, right. It's like, okay, I need to communicate that better. I mean, we even had some scenarios happen today where I'm like, why aren't we?
How does this happen?
Right. I'm like, we created this process and they were like, oh, we don't do that anymore. Awesome. Whose decision was that? Because it wasn't mine.
Right.
Oh, I don't know. We just stopped doing it. Cool.
There was a breakdown somewhere.
Well, we're going to do that because I want that done. You know what I mean? And it's just like, so some of the stuff, like I get a little itchy and so I start like itching myself and people are like, yeah, I wouldn't trust those things. And I'm like, I'm supposed to trust this thing. Like that's what it's here for. Yeah. So, but it's, you know, me going, okay, well, this is what we're doing. And it's been a journey, right? Like I said, I've taken a back seat more so than I should have. And it's just, I took that back seat and took my focus. I don't think I took my focus completely off the Lord, but definitely the obedience piece has waned some because I've trusted others. Yeah. And that happens. I think we do that, right? Like we look for mentors and we look for people that know more than we do, right? Because we're learning. But at the same time, you still have to be true to yourself.
In that, like we bring up kids again. So you didn't know what you're doing when you're raising your first kid, but you would never let somebody else.
Oh, that's 100% true.
You would never let somebody else like make decisions for your kid.
Yep.
So just like a business.
Yeah.
You may not know what you're doing, but never let somebody make decisions for your business.
Yep.
That's the hard lesson that I just swallowed.
Yeah. It's exactly just like this mentor that we've spoken with recently said is like, the only person when you're laying in bed at night that's going to be the ultimate one who's ultimately responsible for however it ends up is you. Yeah. You're the one that's going to sit there with the weight of all that on you. The other people are not. No. They're just going to go find something else to do, you know, and you're going to be the one laying there in bed going, where did it all go wrong? Right. How did it go wrong? What happened? Now I'm in debt or whatever, right? Because people end up going through bankruptcy, stuff like that, right? So that weight, that responsibility wears on you. So like you said, you can't let other people make those decisions. They're not the ones that ultimately have to suffer the consequence of whatever that is. And so as long as if you are the one taking the responsibility of all those key decisions, then if it ultimately does fail, then at least you know that's on you.
Right. Yeah. I was the one that made the decisions. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. 100%.
It's not always easy.
No.
Right? Yeah. So I think we talked about a bunch of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I think how long are we in? Oh, an hour and 20 minutes.
Time flies when you're having fun.
We have to do like part 1, part 2.
Right.
So yeah, that's great, guys. And we're going to do this again.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do is like revisit this like maybe the first of the year and then see where we all are again.
That'd be super interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like take a snapshot of it since they didn't take snapshots at the beginning.
Right.
We'll just kind of take snapshots.
Yeah.
I love that.
That'd be cool.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys coming.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you guys spending your time and getting all this stuff down. I think it's going to help out a lot of people. Hopefully a lot of people watch this just because there's so much information that like people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So to hear like somebody that's actually like been through it I think is the best experience.
I agree.
All right.
That's awesome.
Wrap this up.
right.
See you guys later.